Get bigger.
Yeah.
Testing 1, 2. Very good. Mic is on. Welcome to the City Council Chambers at City Hall, 10 West State Street. Today's date is August 9, 2021, times 5:30 p.m. And it is our regularly scheduled City Council meeting. It's a good idea to join by computer, tablet, smartphone, or in person. And you can dial in too if you get our agenda in advance. Notice to the public. You are welcome to make comments on any of the items that are on the agenda. To do so, you must step up to the microphone, give us your name and address for the record, limit the time for your remarks to 3 minutes or less so that others may be given an opportunity to speak. Speak clearly and direct the comments to the mayor and council, not to any councilor specifically. It's at the discretion of the mayor and the council to respond to specific questions and comments or to have staff respond during the meeting. Now that we've been called to order, I invite anybody able to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Let's do the roll call, please.
Gowdy?
Here.
Hoop?
Here.
Isom?
Here.
Lottie-Hoff?
Here.
Martin?
Here.
Thompson?
Here.
Weirin? Here.
Very good. Full house. Time for any comments by any council members. Raise your hand. Everybody's present. Any from the city administrator? We do have one.
Yes, so one thing I do want to share here initially is that starting next Monday, the Coliseum will be in the Iowa League of Cities All-Star Community People's Choice event, which is basically a bracket-style tournament to figure out who the people choose as the best project that was submitted for an All-Star Community Award but did not win one. And so with that, I would just say that we will be pushing out a lot of information on Facebook. All you need to do is like our project, and we'll continue going every week, hopefully until we are the final two the week of the Iowa League of Cities Conference, which would be September 13th. So please note, we'll be pushing out a lot of information, so if you're on Facebook, please share. And then the other thing that I would like to do is introduce John Hall, who is our new CEO at the Chamber of Commerce, and have him introduce himself.
Excellent. Thanks, Jessica, and good evening, Mayor and Council. I appreciate the opportunity to introduce myself here. So I'm just starting week 2 here as President and CEO of the Marshalltown Area Chamber of Commerce. Couldn't be more excited to be here. Reviewing your agenda tonight, it's pretty incredible the number of things that you guys are moving forward that they're born of disaster in many cases, are incredible opportunities, and to see the public sector investing so heavily in doing some incredible projects. It's my hope and goal to be able to help continue to bring the private investment side of things and help drive more development and more opportunities here in the community. So my wife and I and our 6-week-old daughter are incredibly excited to get moved here to the community, hopefully soon, pending finding a house. The market's not particularly great right now, but we're going to continue hunting for it and look forward to working with you all and continuing to join you at the council meetings. So thank you.
Thank you, John. Welcome to Marshalltown. I have none, and so let's go on to the consent agenda before I entertain a motion. So my understanding that Mr. Thompson would like to remove items 14 and 15. So is there a motion to approve the first 13 items of the consent agenda?
So moved, Your Honor. Second.
Very good. Let's go and do the roll call.
Lottie-Hoff?
Yes.
Martin?
Yes.
Thompson?
Yes.
Weirin?
Yes.
Gowdy?
Yes.
Hoop?
Yes.
Isom?
Yes.
Very good. Thank you. Would you read those first 13 then?
Approved minutes for the July 26, 21 meeting, the bill list in the amount of $1,738,000, $749.48. Approve liquor license amendment for Tannen Inc., including Sunday sales. Approve a premise update for Quick Star number 607 liquor license. The new store is scheduled to open on September 9th, and the address will remain the same at 814 South 6th Street. Approve a tree trimmer license for Brothers Tree Service LLC. Resolution adopting supplement 2018 S4 to Code of Ordinances to the City of Marshalltown, Iowa through Ordinance 15020. Resolution directing the distribution of sales proceeds from the sale of lots in the Via Bluff subdivision. Resolution setting a public hearing on the CDBG application for the First Ave Micah project. Resolution approving contract change order number 3 for the 6th Street softball parking lot improvements project PLT 21001, a decrease of $43,485.95. Resolution approving engineer statement of the completion and accepting the Construct Inc. 6th Street softball parking lot project, being project number PLT 21001, with a final project cost in the amount of $523,307.67. Resolution ordering construction of the 2021 crack sealing and leveling project, STR 21003, setting public hearing on proposed plans, specifications, form of contract, and estimated cost, and directing publication of notice to bidders. Resolution approving engineering service agreements for the Headworks Digester Improvement Project for Fox Engineering in the amount of $501,300. Resolution to approve the 6-month extension of time to complete the code building upgrade grant work for 13 North First Street. Resolution to approve the state recreation trail application for the Iowa River's Edge Trail.
Thank you. You've been practicing your speed reading, haven't you? Is there a motion to approve item number 14, which I'll have you read as well?
Resolution approving an agreement with On Media for community marketing.
I move for approval.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second, Your Honor.
Okay, tie goes to Martin on that one. Discussion. Mr. Thompson, I always invite whoever removes it from the agenda to start the discussion.
Well, I will just, is there a way to combine 14 and 15 into one rather than do them separately?
They're separate contracts.
Separate contracts? Okay. So I'm just going to say for both of them, well, I'll repeat it again for the second one is, to stay true to my internal voices, my character, a niece was named as an employee in one of the proposals. So to stay true, even though she is not one of these two, I will be abstaining from the vote on these,
Okay,
this process.
thank you. Any other discussion? I doubt we need to invite public discussion on these since they're on the consent agenda. Let's call it. Oh, I'm sorry, yeah.
Mark Eaton, 207 South 10th Avenue. I'm concerned with the process used to select these two contracts. 3 of the 5 committee members are direct reports to the city administrator, who is a member of the board of Vision Marshalltown. This creates a conflict of interest, maybe a hostile work environment, because she can actually write up these people for their job performance, and she controls their raises. I don't think that is appropriate. That's all I want to say on this one. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Go ahead.
To respond to that, and we do have multiple members of that committee here in the room, as soon as Vision Marshalltown submitted their request for proposal, I took myself out of the process, coordinated the process only, let them do the discussion about who was in that top 3, and then ultimately in that top 2 arranged meetings and took what their direction was. So I did not have any voting. I would hope that the department heads and city clerk would share that I did not imply any pressure to them or threaten their wages, which I don't actually give anybody a wage increase. You all will do that each year, and there's a step process. So, but I just wanted to make it clear that I made that conflict known to the group that was evaluating very early on.
Thanks, Jessica. And it's my understanding we've had rulings from legal counsel too that in terms of dealing with nonprofits, because the board members or volunteers don't get paid, there is no conflict of interest for people being involved in those. If there were, we'd have a hard time populating nonprofits around here that are so successful and so helpful to the city. Anyone else have any public comment? Seeing nobody rise, let's call the vote on this one.
Gowdy?
Yes.
Hope?
Yes.
Isom?
Yes.
Lollihop?
Yes.
Martin?
Yes.
Thompson?
Abstain, please.
Weirin?
Yes.
Okay, would you read item 15?
Resolution approving an agreement with Vision Marshalltown for community marketing.
I move for approval.
Thank you.
Second.
Very good. Discussion on this one?
Your Honor,
Yes, sir.
again, I would like to state that this is a really good outcome for the city, taking the strengths of both of these entities, and that did require separate contracts, and I think we're going to get a very good coverage for our advertising dollars. So I'm very pleased with this outcome.
Thank you. Other comment by the council? Call for public comment.
Mark Eaton, 1007 South 10th Avenue. I'm going to read you something from the Vision Marshalltown website. Vision Marshalltown is not a network, Vision Marshalltown is a network of community stakeholders. Vision Marshalltown is not an organization. Vision Marshalltown is a network. It says that twice in this document. I recall this being changed a few years ago when I inquired of the State Ombudsman's Office on the validity of Vision Marshalltown. And the State Ombudsman called Ms. Kinzer and asked her questions, and she said, oh, this is just a group of stakeholders who are interested in the growth of Marshalltown. It's not an organization. Vision Marshalltown is not registered as a DBA on the state website. It is not registered as a 501c3. Last meeting, who did it? Julie Hitchens said Vision Marshalltown is part of MCBD. Well, MCBD is a 501c6. And they have a 501c3 partner called Marshalltown Main Street Partnership, which is actually where Vision Marshalltown is. Kylie Leisure is the paid executive director of Marshalltown Main Street Partnership, not Vision Marshalltown. None of the board members listed on this that I know of are board members of Marshalltown Main Street Partnership. Maybe Julie Hitchens is. The contract states, Vision Marshalltown shall not assign any interest in this agreement and shall not transfer any interest in this agreement without prior written approval of the city. Now, Julie said last meeting that the funds will be run through MCBD, which is not Vision Marshalltown. The contract also says Vision Marshalltown agrees to indemnify and hold harmless the city from any liabilities whatsoever arising out of the actions by Vision Marshalltown as also employee. Sit down under the terms of this agreement and shall be. Your time is up. You sit down.
I have a 3-minute timer up there. I sometimes give you leeway, not tonight. Anyone else would like to comment? Let's vote on this one.
Hope.
Yes.
Isom.
Yes.
Bonnie Hoff.
Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
Thompson.
Abstain, please.
Waring.
Yes.
Gowdy.
Yes.
Very good. Let's go on to motions. Item G, would you read the first one, please?
Motion to approve beer garden and resolution allowing open containers on public ways for Oktoberfest, September 23rd through September 25th.
Before comment, let me ask for a motion to approve it.
I move for
So moved.
second.
Discussion.
So we have Dwayne Dixon here with the Oktoberfest Foundation to give you some details on the event.
Good evening, Dwayne Dixon. I'm president of Oktoberfest this year. If I could get the... We are planning on bringing Oktoberfest back to downtown, mostly centered around the courthouse. The pretty much all the standard events for the weekend from Thursday through Sunday are going to be brought back. Kids Night Thursday with the Kids Run and the pageant. Saturday morning opens up with the 5K, 10K. The route should be announced pretty soon. That'll be followed by the Grand Parade in the morning, car hop in the afternoon. Saturday evening, we have live music. Sunday, we have the motorcycle show, Friday night, we have the car show Friday night with live music. Saturday is the usual events. Sunday, the motorcycle show. We are planning on doing a beer garden right on South Center Street, just south of Main, in the first half block with the stage pretty much in front of Pence pointing north, and then we'll have that area, it'll be this red square here. The carnival will be in the usual spot on South First Avenue, extending to the parking lot south of the Annex Building. And I think that's pretty much it.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? About how many years has Oktoberfest been?
It's somewhere around 35 or 38.
Wow.
The number changes depending on who you ask.
Well, thank you for reading it this year. Any questions by the council or comments?
I think it looks great, Mr. Dixon, and it's also nice to see it visualized this way. Thank you.
Any public comment? Call the roll.
Lollimoff?
Yes.
Martin?
Yes.
Thompson?
Yes.
Waring?
Yes.
Gowdy?
Yes.
Hoop?
No.
Isom?
Yes.
Thank you. Carried. All right, on to number 2, please.
Thank you. Hope to see everyone up there.
Motion to approve Dave's 5-day liquor license for the Paranormal Symposium at Riverview Park, August 20th to August 22nd.
Entertain a motion first.
So moved. Second, Your Honor.
I was hoping the spirit would move somebody.
Aha.
Any discussion?
Yes, Your Honor. So the council approved the beer garden already for this on March 8th. And Denny Gray of Dave's Bar will be the license holder for this event, and his staff will operate the beer garden on Friday and Saturday. They decided they will not have sales on Sunday.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Public comment? Roll call on this one.
Waring?
Yes.
Gowdy?
Yes.
Hoop?
No.
Isom?
Yes.
Lollimoff?
Yes.
Martin?
Yes.
Thompson?
Yes.
Got carried as well. On to number 3.
Motion to approve 5-day liquor license for Jesse Switzer for the Resurrection Fest event at Review Park, August 27th and 28th.
Move for approval.
Thank you.
Second.
Very good. Discussion?
Yes, Your Honor, this is a 2-day metal festival concert down at Riverview. The council approved the beer garden on July 12th on this one. Jesse Switzer is the event organizer. He's applied for his own license, and he has worked with the police department to have officers working this event.
Thank you. Questions or comments by the council? If not, by the public? If not, let's vote.
Hoop?
No.
Isom?
Yes.
Lollimoff?
Yes.
Martin?
Yes.
Thompson?
Yes.
Waring?
Yes.
Gowdy?
Yes.
It's apparently a National Liquor License Day here. Would you read the 4th one after that one, Karen?
Motion to approve 5-day liquor license for Impala Ballroom at the Central Iowa Fairgrounds Arena for a rodeo August 21st.
Move for approval.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion on this one.
Yes, Your Honor. Jose Regulato of Impala Ballroom is hosting a rodeo at the fairgrounds on the 21st. He's applied for the 5-day license to operate the beer sales. He's also working with the police department to have officers working the event, and he has private security, and they will have a shuttle service going to and from the hotels.
Thank you. If anybody caught 60 Minutes last night, they had a special on some Utah family that does the rodeo. It was pretty interesting, actually. Discussion or comments about this motion? Public discussion. Let's vote on this as well.
Lottie Huff,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Waring,
Yes.
Gowdy,
Yes.
Hoop,
Oh.
Isom.
Yes.
Very good. That carried as well on to the fifth one, if you would.
Motion to approve new liquor license for the Flying Elbow at 229 North 13th Street.
Move for approval, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Second, Your Honor.
Let's go with Martin on the tie for the second. Discussion, oh, you already had somebody else? Oh, you just pick, I don't care, nobody reads it anyway. Discussion or comments?
Yes, Your Honor. Garrett Goodman has applied for a Class C liquor license for the Flying Elbow Restaurant that will be opening hopefully this month on 13th Street.
Any questions or comments? I've got one if nobody else up here does. We got a tour there when we had the food truck recently at 13th Street, and it's going to be a nice facility. Really is. It'll be nice to supplement the other dining and other options on 13th Street. And it's kind of exciting to see them at the point where they can apply for the liquor license. Does the public have any comment? Let's vote.
Thompson,
Yes.
Waring,
Yes.
Gowdy,
Yes.
Hoop,
No.
Isom,
Yes.
Lottie Huff,
Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
Very good. On to the sixth and last of the motions, if you will.
Motion to approve new liquor license for East Side Liquor and Grocery at 1116 East Nevada Street with new ownership.
Move for approval, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Second.
Let's discuss this one.
Yes, Waleed Perez is the new owner of this establishment. The ABD requires that a new license is applied for when there's a change of ownership. So this is for a Class E liquor license.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from the council or public? Let's vote.
Hope,
Nope.
Isom,
Yes.
Lottie Huff,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Waring,
Yes.
Gowdy.
Yes.
Very good. On to H, which is reports. We have one of those with the Marshalltown Police Department 2020 annual report.
Good evening, Mike Tupper, Marshalltown Police Department. So everybody should have one of these tonight. So we will also be posting this report on the website tomorrow, and we'll push it on social media as well. So this is the report for 2020 that talks about the activities of the Marshalltown Police Department. First thing I want to say is I'm very proud of the men and women serving in the police department. They had another great year and did tremendous work under some very difficult circumstances at times. So as you all know, COVID-19 was the theme of the year, but we also had a derecho, and we're still recovering from a tornado, and the police department still has other work of the day that happens during all these natural disasters. So we have a fine police force, and I deserve zero credit for the work that they do. They get all the credit. They're doing a great job, and I'm very proud of them. So, having said that, we do have some challenges in our community. Drugs continue to be a challenge that I'm worried about. Methamphetamine is still the biggest problem that we deal with and really drives all of the crime that we deal with in Marshalltown. Violent crime is very rare in the community, but it does occur occasionally. But when it comes to property crimes like theft and burglary, we can usually find some sort of nexus with the drug trade. So methamphetamine is still a problem for us, and is a problem in Iowa. It's not just a Marshalltown problem, it's a problem throughout the Midwest. But we have a growing concern with opioids and heroin specifically. Heroin has become something that's more on our radar than ever before, and that scares the heck out of me, I'll be honest with you, okay? We're doing our best to try to stay on top of that problem, but that is an issue that's going to require more resources, certainly law enforcement resources, but at some point the community is going to probably have to look to find more resources in the area of treatment and prevention. So we can't do all of that. So as city government, that's not really our role, but it's an important role when we're talking about problems with drugs and alcohol. Recruitment is a problem for law enforcement agencies across this country. I've been a police chief now for the last 17 years, the last 10 here in Marshalltown. And to be quite honest with you, brutally honest with you, recruitment has been a problem for about 20, 25 years. But it's getting worse and worse and worse. And 2020 made it very difficult for us to find police officers. And when I start talking to my peers around the state, in places like Ankeny, West Des Moines, Dubuque, places that traditionally have not had trouble finding police applicants, and now they're having trouble finding police applicants, I'm concerned. It's a problem. Last time we put out a call for applications, I think we had about 25, and we ended up with a hiring list of 3, and we're only going to hire 1 person off that list. So it's becoming difficult to find police officers, and we're currently hiring, by the way. So if you know anybody, this morning I told a gentleman, if you know any young men or women looking for a job, send them my way. They don't have to be young. If you know any men or women that are looking for a job, send them my way, because we need good police officers. But right now we have 2 openings, and we have, I'm aware of 2 people that could be applying or leaving us, so we could have 4 openings at some point soon. I have 1 person getting ready to graduate the academy. I have 1 person getting ready to go to the academy. So those are 2 spots that, on paper, we're paying those people, but they're not really helping us. I have 1 person on military deployment that probably won't be back until sometime late next year, if at all. So we have some staffing shortages that are a concern for us. We're falling behind. You know, I know you don't want to hear this, but we are falling behind when it comes to compensation packages, even with our comparable agencies. When we talk about Burlington and Muscatine and in Mason City, some of those places, we are falling a little bit behind. But for us here so close to the metro area, the people that we're recruiting and trying to hire, they're also applying for jobs in the metro area or over in Story County, and we're falling way behind with those agencies. So when you have young people that can choose, it used to be when I was looking for a job, the agencies controlled it, right? Because they had limited jobs available for a lot of applicants. Now there's lots of jobs available for limited applicants. And so if you're a young person out of college and you've got some student loan debt, and you can work someplace else for an extra $10,000 a year, you're probably going to take that job. So that's an area that concerns me. I think we also need to figure out a way to think outside the box when it comes to recruitment. And right now we're still kind of, advertising and looking for people in traditional ways, and maybe that's not working anymore. Maybe we're not reaching the people we need to reach. And the problem is, I don't have enough time in the day or enough people in the department to just assign to recruitment. So trying to figure out how we do a better job of recruiting is going to require resources as well. So those, resources, we talk about it all the time. You have a lot of things that require more resources. I understand that. So, but today I'm talking about the police department report, so I'm sharing my concerns. But I know you have a lot of things you have to balance. There are a lot of good things going on here, though. We have, I think, a great reputation in the community. We have a lot of support in this community, and we really appreciate that. Credit goes to the men and women that work in the police department. They do a great job every day of building relationships in the community. And Impact has been a great thing for us, too. And I think that's a program, if we can keep it going, keep it funded, is going to be a program that really helps our men and women in the field as they deal with difficult problems. We're dealing with more and more mental health in the community. That's why Impact is so important. I think city staff last week got a front row seat to some of that. And we're seeing more and more people on the street that are dealing with significant mental health problems. And you can call the cops and we'll show up with a law enforcement solution, but we need to bring more than that. And so Impact is that program that's going to help us, I think, deal with some of those problems. End of the day, I just want to say thank you for the great opportunity that I have every day to serve here in the Marshalltown community. And again, I need to give kudos to the people that I work with and thank them for everything that they do, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Time for questions or comments? Your report was done before the meeting we had last Thursday with Dale Woolery from the top level person on the drug and alcohol things. And on Friday, there was a meeting up here with the top person with NAMI for mental health. So those things are happening in town. Some people don't see them and won't see the results for months. But Woolery was really impressed with the impact program here. You could tell that.
Yeah, it's going really well. We gave David Hicks and I gave a presentation for a group of community members, I think it was Friday now, and was well received. So I think the community's behind this program. We just got to figure out a way to fund it long term, and we have something that's working. And that's the thing about programs. You know, we always try to do stuff, but we want to propose things that are going to be long lasting, have a long term impact. And I hate to have a rock star of a program and then it goes away in a short period of time. So we have to figure out a way to keep it going, and we're continuing to work with our partners in the community and throughout the state, try to find some funding, but that's an important project if we can keep it going.
Very good. Thanks, Chief. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. On to item I, which is resolutions. Would you read the first one, Madam Clerk?
Resolution setting a public hearing to review the Iowa Economic Development Authority Community Development Block Grant, CDBG, Upper Story Housing Conversion Grant Program.
Move for approval.
Thank you. Is there a second?
So moved.
Thank you.
Hey, Michelle Sponheimer, Housing Community Development Director. I'll just briefly kind of talk about this. I know we're going to get into some of these conversations a little bit later about this project. But the Community Development Block Grant is a program that the Iowa Economic Development Authority administers, and they have a variety of different types of programs, one of which is currently available, is the Upper Story Housing program. And so this is a specific project based, as opposed to some of our other things where we look at broad-based, where we can have many applicants. This is targeted to a specific project. The proposal would be to assist, if granted, up to $550,000 towards the conversion of housing at 36 West Main Street. 50,000 of that would be the potential for Green Streets, if that is selected to move forward. So 500,000 plus the potential for an additional 50,000. The total project is about $2 million for the housing components and this is specific to the 36 West Main. So we want the opportunity to help in completing this application. Region 6 has also been working on this as well with the owners and developer and working through all of those details. So we have a lot of different things at play, which we're going to get into some more this evening, but we really are looking for council approval to submit this grant request to the state, which I believe is due the end of August. Is that right, Jessica? Is this one 31st? So.
Very good. Thanks, Michelle. Any questions or comments for Michelle? Okay. Public comment. Roll call.
Bodyhoff,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Waring,
Yes.
Gowdy,
Yes.
Hoop,
Yes.
Isom,
Yes.
Very good. That carried. Let's go on to the next resolution, please.
Resolution amending the debt policy to increase the debt capacity threshold to 70% of legal debt capacity.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Second.
Very good. Discussion by council. And other discussion.
Yes, Your Honor. So at the last meeting, we had an item for 75% that did not achieve the majority of 4 that was needed. In talking with some council members after that meeting, our rules do say that we can provide something substantively different on the agenda, and so I went ahead and put the policy at 70% after hearing that this could be a point of agreement for some. So that is what is before you tonight. That is what I have based our future discussion off of as well. And so I would encourage action so that we can get started on the planning of some of the projects that would be in our borrowing discussion, as this is really preventing that discussion from moving forward.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for Jessica? Let's invite public comment on this one.
Your Honor, I have a,
Yeah, I do too.
Okay. Let's,
Your
we
Honor.
can flip a coin.
Got it, thank you. I've had the concern all along on moving too far, too fast. We've accomplished much as a council, as a city, in the last 4 to 8 years and so on. And I'm thinking about the airport, I'm thinking about the police and fire station. We've had some street improvements, not enough. Streets are a major problem. They do need a remedy and something that's permanent. I do favor what Jessica has done in that suggesting a lesser percentage. I know we'll go right to that percentage as soon as legally possible. I dislike, I should say, things that come in over the top, the extras that perhaps have not been in the plan, the strategic plan and so on. We've had instances of that. We've had expenditures with council approval that have had less priority to my way of thinking. I urge caution in the future on borrowing. It is debt. I know at this point with our AA2 bond rating that we are in an advantageous position. Interest rates are low. Money is out there for grants and other possibilities that would not be direct Marshalltown tax dollars. So I guess I'm wavering between a yes and a no vote, but what's going to sway me now, I think, will be the percentage change from 75% to 70%. But I do urge caution in the future for the next council as they prioritize the city's needs and try to meet the many challenges that we have before us. So thank you, Your Honor.
Thanks, Mr. Martin. And Mr. Thompson, I believe you were wishing to speak as well.
thank you, Your Honor. Jessica, where would we be at 70%, dollar-wise?
So we would be actually, I apologize, I didn't pull this up earlier. We would be,
It's the same one from last week, right? Or
no.
last meeting?
It's different, so, oops, that's not what I wanted. So we can only borrow 9.75 million this year. The amount was, I think, 10 million something, so we would not be, we would be below what that capacity limit would be. Let me pull it up here. Yeah, so 70% is 15.4 million. We're maxed to borrow at 9.7 this year, so there is then capacity that starts to carry forward in each year. And as we talked about in prior meetings, this is all based on a 0.5% growth percentage. We do believe that will change. As Diana said, she believes it could be somewhere around 1%, but we did not adjust that. That is just a demonstration, but it's really this column right here and this number right here and this that are the important ones for this evening's discussion. Of course, there are certainly long-term needs. We only have the $3 million of street improvements built in for each year. I think in talking with most of you, you'd like to see that number change and increase based on the recent report that we've had. And so, but those are all discussions that we can have as we talk about debt capacity. But ultimately, what 70% does is gives us more than what is needed to move forward with 9.75 million in this year.
Thank you. Other questions or comments by the council? Open for public comment. Open for a vote.
Martin.
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
Weirin.
Yes.
Gowdy.
Yes.
Hoop.
I gotta say no.
Isom.
Yes.
Boddinghoff.
Yes.
Okay, that carried. On to the next resolution.
Resolution authorizing the purchase of property at 310 North 5th Street.
Entertain a motion.
So moved, Your Honor.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Very good. Discussion on this one?
Yes, so this one kind of goes outside the bounds of what we had normally done, but not significantly. The purchasers of a property tax certificate in the amount of $3,053, they purchased 310 North Fifth Street on a tax deed. I did go ahead and run a lien report to confirm that it is free and clear, and that it does show that a tax deed was issued. And they are asking if we would purchase the property for $3,053. I can tell you that it is a significant nuisance that has, it's one that we've had our eye on for a 657A, but it's deteriorated significantly in the last few years and is one that we would put as a priority for moving forward with.
I can add to it. I'm one of the complainers, and I have been for a number of years. It is within a half a block of Rogers School. It is literally next door to a daycare center. And according to the neighbors, there have been all sorts of raccoons and other vermin, including people, going in there doing things they shouldn't. And so it will be nice, however this is resolved, it will be nice to get that off the dangerous and dilapidated rolls. I'm commenting too much tonight. Other questions or comments for Jessica about this one? Let's open it up to the public. And let's take a vote.
Gowdy?
Yes.
Hoop?
Yes.
Isom?
Yes.
Lollinghoff?
Yes.
Martin?
Yes.
Thompson?
Yes.
Waring?
Yes.
Very good. That carried as well. Let's go on to the fourth resolution, please.
Resolution authorizing the city to submit an Economic Development Administration, U.S. Department of Commerce, American Rescue Plan Act Economic Adjustment Assistance Grant.
Move for approval, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Second.
Let's go right off on the second this time. Michelle?
Yeah, Michelle Sponheimer, Housing Community Development Director. Well, it's grant season as well, and you can tell from your agenda today. This is another grant opportunity that we have been made aware of, specifically through the EDA. And as you know, we are familiar with some of the EDA grant opportunities. We used EDA to complete our downtown master plan following the tornado. They granted us $100,000 for that planning effort. And then the Edgewood Extension Project is an EDA project. This is specific to the American Rescue Plan Act funding and opportunity for infrastructure improvements, and we are looking at this grant application for use of completing Phase 2A and 2B of the downtown implementation plan, so that would specifically be the Main Street portions. And so we have already been talking about State Street and other conversations at the council level, so we're thinking ahead to what's next and how do we fund that. And so that's where we're looking at this opportunity. The total grant does allow for submissions up to $10 million. There is a 20% match. I won't say requirement necessarily, but certainly to be competitive, that is expected, that there would be a 20% match. We're anticipating the Phase 2A, Phase 2B to be approximately $6 million. So that would put our match amount at about 1.2 in our initial estimates. We're working with Bolton and Mink to kind of finalize what really that scope would look like for the application purposes, to submit that application in its entirety. So that is what we're looking at. This application is it does not have a time limit. It is an open-ended application, so certainly the first come, first serve is going to be important when competing for these funds. And so since it is a federal competition, we want to be sure that we have a project that we can submit and be considered as soon as possible for that. So we are looking to submit that. We would be trying to do that probably within this month or so, or as soon as we can, with the help of Bolton and Mink finalizing some of those scopes and plans.
Thanks, Michelle. Any questions or comments for Michelle?
Your Honor,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make comment to Michelle. I applaud her efforts. She's been very consistent and very loyal to the grantsmanship phase of what the city's wanting to do, and been very successful. and I applaud her efforts, and I encourage this application. I know it's a big one, but you've got to be competitive to even have a chance. So more power to us. Again, I've said I'd rather have Marshalltown have federal monies or outside monies than any other community in the nation. I'm selfish that way, but I think it will, if successful. These grants do have an impact on something like our $35 million proposal for a downtown. And that's what frightens me, but we've made good progress, and we're making good progress. So I thank you in particular. Thank you, Michelle.
Other comments by the council? If not, let's invite the public comment. And let's call the roll.
Martin,
Yes?
Thompson,
Yes.
Waring,
Yes.
Gowdy,
Yes.
Hoop,
Yes.
Isom,
Yes.
Lolleyhoff.
Yes.
Very good. Before we go on to the next resolution, speaking of that, Mr. Martin, one of those improvements has come to fruition, or nearly fruition, and that's the parking lot south of the Main Street buildings that I got to park in last Friday, I think it was, for lunch. And that is really attractive with that permeable paving.
I agree.
It just is, it's fun when Marshalltown does things and does them big and does them right the first time, and that's one of those classic examples. So I am pontificating again. Let's go on to the next resolution, please.
Resolution authorizing the city to submit an Iowa Great Place grant application to the Iowa Department of Cultural Affairs.
Move for approval.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you.
Okay. Michelle Sponheimer, again, Housing Community Development. And I agree, we had a Great Place staff visit, site visit recently. We walked to that parking lot. It was still a little bit under construction, and showcased the great things that we're doing there. And kudos certainly to Justin and his team for that effort. We'll hopefully be seeing some mural activity, I think, back there too, so it'll be an exciting space. We are an Iowa Great Place community, City of Marshalltown is, which is a designation we received in 2019, reconfirming our designation from 2014. As part of the Iowa Great Place funding, we do have the opportunity designation, we do have the opportunity to submit for funding requests during our designation period. We are proposing a Iowa Great Place application this year, specifically for assistance with the what I will call the Marshalltown Arts and Civic Center, formerly Fisher Community Center, so the MAC building, as part of their Phase 1 renovation project. So we're looking to submit an application in the amount of $350,000 towards that project. We did have to submit a pre-application letter of intent or interest to the Iowa Great Place for their consideration, and then they made the decision whether or not to invite us to submit a full application. So we have been invited to do that. This application will be due September 1st, so we're busy working on getting that together. It will go before their board for consideration and approval. We'd hope to find out in the fall.
Thank you. Questions for Michelle or comments by the council?
Your Honor, if I may.
You may.
Michelle, so the Iowa Department of Cultural Affairs does not require that we own the building?
No.
Okay.
That's
So it's
not a
just something
requirement.
that better for the city?
Yeah, our last Great Places funding project included the installation of Echo on 13th Street and drills at the high school.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Any public comment? Roll call.
Lolleyhoff,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Waring,
Yes.
Gowdy,
Yes.
Hoop,
Yes.
Isom.
Yes.
Very good. On to the next resolution, please.
Public hearing and resolution for the conveyance and transfer of title of parcel 831811301034 herein described from the city of Marshalltown, Iowa to Larry J. and Mary Ann Weber.
Okay, I will declare the public hearing is open now at 6:19 p.m. Did the clerk receive any written comments?
No, Your Honor.
Time for public comments. Seeing and hearing none, on to staff review.
Yes, I just wanted to pull up a map and remind you of what we're talking about here. It is this oddly shaped, what was intended to be some right-of-way, but is not going to clearly be some right-of-way at this point. And so it's this parcel that the Webbers, who live right here, had requested to purchase for $1. And so that is what is before you tonight on the public hearing. We still do need a final legal description from CGA, as this, even though it shows up as a parcel, it never had a formal legal description recorded. So still waiting for that and to wrap up as well, if you would like to proceed.
Any questions or comments about this item? I guess, well, that's been the staff review. It is now time for council comments, so any comments? Hearing none, I'll declare the public hearing closed at 6:20 PM. I think that sets a new record, and would invite anybody to move.
I move that we move forward with the resolution to sell the property, Your Honor.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call.
Pope,
Yes.
Isom,
Yes. For the heartache.
Bodiroff,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Weirin,
Yes.
Gowdy.
Yes.
On to the next and last of this category, and that's number 7.
It's a public hearing on the status of the CDBG Tornado Housing Rehab Project, 19HSG005.
It's 6:21 PM, so public hearing is declared to be open. Did you receive any written comments?
No, Your Honor.
Public comments?
Okay, Michelle Sponheimer, Housing Community
Oh,
Development.
we didn't give the public enough time. 1, 2, 3. Staff comment.
All right. Michelle Sponheimer still. So as I mentioned previously, the Community Development Block Grant, IEDA funding, is one that we utilize a lot for different programming. You may recall that we received a owner-occupied rehab grant that Region 6 has been administering for us, specifically for tornado disaster recovery under the CDBG program. This grant has been in effect and is part of that process. We're about halfway through the funding. We needed to hold a public hearing just to give an update on status of funds. And so just in general, some information that I'm going to just share with you, which was also included in the packet, is that we have completed 9 projects at this time. 2 others have been let for bid, or in the different stages of the process. They're continuing to take applications. The units do have to be owner-occupied and in an area affected by the 2018 tornado. Total expenditures so far to date are $242,188. We do have a commitment to complete at least 15 homes as part of this project, and as I understand it from Region 6, we are on track to do that and should be able to complete this project appropriately. The total grant amount that we had is $500,000 for this award. So this is just an update. There's no resolution or action needed. Just wanted to hold a hearing to relay that information.
Thanks, Michelle. That's kind of an exclamation point for what you've been doing to get grants for this city. After staff review, it's council comments. Hearing seen none, I declare this public hearing is closed at 6:23 PM. Thank you. On to discussion items. The first one of which is incentives for 36 West Main Street restoration.
Mayor and council members, Joe Carter, my wife Janelle Carter, Scott Cutler, and Pete Cutler to my right. Janelle and I have been residents of Marshalltown at 610 Elmwood Drive for 26 years. Pete and Scott Cutler, Scott in the middle, Pete to my farthest to the right, both construction engineers from Iowa State University. Pete is with Capital Homes and Scott is with Cutler Development. Both are from the Des Moines area, reside there. We are here today to talk about the Willards Building at 36 West Main and the renovation of that space. But while the Willards Building is the topic for today, this project is tied to the Hopkins Building, which is at 32 and 34 West Main, the building or buildings next to the Willards Building. And the entire project, because ultimately it's a package deal. First of all, I'm going to talk a little bit about some background. I'm obviously president and CEO of Marshalltown Company, which you guys have heard from before. I wanted to comment that we have renewed the look on Noble Street. Oops, let's see if I hit the right button. On Noble Street, 8th Avenue, and Main Street. If any of you have been down there recently, it doesn't look like that anymore. And there were some nice pictures of the old Dunham Bush, MEPCO building, Don Anderson building, whatever you care to call it, which is now down and obviously looking a little bit different. There's the renovation of Marshalltown Company after the 2019 renovation. You can still just see to the back side of that picture the Don Anderson building, MEPCO building, Dunham Bush building, which is now down. And then finally, there's the construction, as of about a week ago, soon to be putting siding and roofing on that soon. That's a $12 million plus investment that the company has made, that we've been excited to make in the city. And I wanted to say that we've got $100,000 of city money for abatement, a little bit over that. We appreciate that. But we're trying to make some great strides down on our end of town. Then I wanted to also talk about Crosby Park. This is a $7 million plus investment made by MHS Properties, of which Janelle and I are the managers of that. Janelle has really done all the work there. I do have to say that she modified the plans to Crosby Park shortly after her father had passed away. When I was involved, she realized that the plans weren't nearly as good, and so she has made that even better. But really, all joking aside, she's the major investor and person who's made those things happen. $7 million plus by the time we finish the 35th unit of the 6th building, and that should be ready to go near the end of this year, early next. No city investment, $0 coming on that. And if that hasn't been a catalyst for more growth and development on 6th Street, I don't know what I'm talking about. Then I want to talk about personal. I've said often in our own home that these days are so much different than when I was a kid. We all have 401ks, we all have IRAs, we have our own investments in Wall Street and in mutual funds. When I was a kid, those things weren't around. You could invest in stock, but there wasn't such a thing as mutual funds. They didn't talk about IRAs. They didn't talk about 401ks. We didn't have that. So what did people do back in those days? They invested in their community for the most part. And I think Janelle took me at my word one more time, throwing my shoe at the television, and she said, well, then why don't we do something about it? So even when people have said we'd never be able to fill those apartments and get those higher rents in executive level townhomes to rent, even when people knew the return was low and the risk was high, after all these projects, I think Janelle and I have earned your trust in that we'll do what we say we'll do. So then I want to jump to the Cutlers, because those young gentlemen, Mr. Tupper kept focusing on young people, and I don't know if these two guys are young. Crosby Park would not have happened without Pete Cutler and Capital Homes. We've recruited Scott Cutler of Cutler Development and Pete Cutler to help us with the Willard Hopkins project, as we call it. They've done similar old buildings in Valley Junction and the area within Dominion, so they have the experience we needed, plus we trust them from our previous experience. And so let me show you 3 pictures there. There's the inside of one of the buildings that they were working on in Valley Junction. It ultimately, if I hit my down arrow, becomes that sort of establishment. Obviously looks a little bit different, and from the outside when the renovation was done, sorry we didn't have a before of the renovation before it was completed, but they're familiar with this work, have done that sort of work, and there we go. So now I'm going to show you some pictures of the outside of the building. To the left is the Willard Hopkins buildings as they are today, with the nice plywood. Guess it's worth more today because the plywood's worth more. And the pictures to the right of the architect's renderings of what the exterior of those buildings will look like in the front. And they'd also taken a picture of the back, so they sent that to us and had done that rendering as well, and what it looks like, I guess it was probably from a month ago. The back side of that, obviously not real attractive, but what it will look like based on what the architect has drawn up so far. And finally, I want to say this project is risky. I thought Crosby Park was risky, but I felt very comfortable in what we were doing and what our projections were. This one's riskier. It's likely why several large outside developers who have looked at these two buildings, and ultimately they always walk away. But this team is going to put it together. This team is going to do the work. I also wanted to mention that if you look at the Marshalltown Downtown Master Plan, which I know you guys helped fund, I know you guys have spent a lot of time working that, making it better, making this downtown better. This is clearly one of those projects that will be a catalyst to what we need to do on Main Street. Obviously, they don't look so good right now, and we're hoping to make that better, and we think that's a big deal. So here's the financials, which really apply to the resolution about the CDBG grant and some of those things that you'll be talking about. $4.8 million, we think, to do this total project. We already own the Willards building. We do not own the Hopkins building. We have the option to buy the Hopkins building should we be able to put everything together. There are several grants and tax credits that we've either applied for or we will apply for when the timing is proper, and so that's where the $1.8 million shows up in that spreadsheet that you see in front of you. There's a $450,000 cash investment, and by the time everything is done, and assuming we get those grants and tax credits, we'll have a bank loan at the end of this construction period of $1.8 million that we'll have to fill. Our gap is $750,000 to get any decent return. In short, this project is out of gas if we can't fill the gap. It's kind of blocked on the screen, but I'm sure you can see it. The first portion of that gap is $300,000. And really everything is, even though we're working the project together with both of those buildings, the project needs to keep things separated for these grants. Federal money, state money, where these grants go. And so we very much had to keep 32 and 34, Willards building, 36 West Main, no, sorry. I said 32 and 34, the Hopkins building, 36 West Main, the Willards building, keep those separated. So we've got a $750,000 gap. We're really talking about the $300,000 gap, trying to fill that with some of the funds. So that's where we are.
Thank you. Any questions or comments by the council?
Sure. Mr. Carter, tell us your plans for the buildings. What are you going to do with them? They look pretty.
That is a great question. I'm going to turn that over to the team behind me.
So what we have planned is on the Hopkins building, if any of you have been in there, it's got the 3 stories, 4 apartments on each of the 2 upper stories and 2 retail spaces on the lower. And then in the Willards building, it would be 5 units on the upper story, which is the most recent grant that we're looking at, an apartment in the back of the Willards building, and a work-live space that's ADA accessible, and then a front part retail space.
Question. I have a
Yes,
question.
certainly, go for it.
Can you explain further the accessibility? I know you're not putting in an elevator, but I'd like to learn more about some of the accessibility.
Yeah, what we have is, if you're familiar with the Willard building, it kind of slopes back, and so there's a side entryway, and then there's the back side of the Hopkins building there's a grassy area. There would be a ramp back there, and then an apartment on the very back end of the Willard building, so you'd be able to take a ramp up and get in there, so it would be ADA accessible. It would also be accessible for anybody that needed to come into that office. So there would be an office space just to the front of that, which you could access from either side. So that's
Okay, thank you.
Questions or comments for the Carters?
Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
Janelle, what's your timetable?
I'm going to ask Pete to answer that one.
These guys keep telling me that if everything goes the way they think, construction starts spring of 2022. They won't get any more particular than that because I asked them, what does spring mean, right? And they say spring of 2022. This project, the way it has to be completed, we will still be working on it in 2024. That's what makes it so scary, because we've seen this rapid inflation on so many things already, and I think that's what makes me a little bit more uncomfortable with this project. I don't know where where Pete was going to go with that, but we've talked about it. The CDBG application will limit us to to have to do the upper portion of the Willard building before we can really touch the retail space first floor. It's what they require, so we will live to that to get potentially that $500,000 that we desperately need. So we'll be working it well into 2024 if we can complete by the end of 2024.
But with two separate projects, you can be working simultaneously on the two buildings, correct?
Well, yes and no. As he mentioned, that CBDG grant does require that you phase this project out. So we have to complete a portion of the project before we can start the next portion of the project. And so that does extend our timeline pretty considerably. But yes, we will be able to work on both buildings simultaneously, but we can't work on the entire project simultaneously. We do have to phase it.
So we won't see full return on our investment, in your investment, until 2028. Because you won't hit the tax rolls till 25, or full tax value, right?
It's complicated with retail and residential.
Yeah, but if you want to handle the $3.6 million construction loan, I'd be good with that too. But I hear exactly what you say. There's just no way for us to make it any faster.
So that moots, or makes my next question moot. If it takes that long, you don't have anybody lined up to go in there right now then?
Nope.
Okay, so 13, so we're looking at investing the starting point for 13 potential apartments downtown.
And 3 retail.
Yeah, 13 loft spaces,
Right.
all rental,
Eight,
potentially
five,
potentially the one downstairs in the Willard, so 14
okay, 14.
apartment rentals, and then 3 different retail spaces. We can put 2 in the Hopkins. Somebody could combine if we wanted to, but there's potentially 3 retail spaces, and then we've also got that workspace. Because the Willard's building is so long, reaches all the way back to that parking lot. The architect today has drawn in a work-live space that is ADA accessible that Janelle talked about. That really is something kind of unique, and so we'll see how that plays out. But that's our intent right now. Does that help?
Yep. Thank you very much.
You bet. Are there comments or questions by the council?
Okay, with the comments, I wanted to go through the memo that I included in the packet here, and so you can kind of see things. I did realize that I had an error in that I said that the catalyst funds would be going to 36 West Main. That is not true. We do have some catalyst funds on hand that we have yet to allocate to a project. We're waiting on that. They would need to go to the Hopkins building, because the state has advised, do not commingle state funds that have no restrictions with federal funds like the Community Development Block Grant we've talked about for the Willards building. And so that's where we're trying to segregate funds here. And so as we look at, as they mentioned, the total gap that is present is $750,000 on both projects. I didn't try and get us to the full $750,000 at this point because it's really the $300,000 gap on the Willards project is the most important for us to be able to bring back a resolution pledging support and incentives for the application, which is due August 31st. So I do want to kind of walk you through how the $300,000 could be met. So something that it's, again, good timing and things happening, and we'll be discussing this as I think the next item on the agenda. Part of the requirements for the Community Development Block Grant is that 51% of the units need to be affordable for a period of 5 years. Using kind of the $50,000 that we were initially talking about on the catalyst side of things for trying to support a unit, there will be 3 of the 5 units on that second story of the Willards building that will be limited to someone who is considered low to moderate income for a period of 5 years. And so one option, because the American Rescue Plan allows for affordable housing development, and there will be 3 affordable units for a 5-year period of time as required by another grant, there's certainly funds that we could put there in truly any amount. It doesn't have to be 150. That's just out there as sort of a logical number that I took from another source. Well, this next one is not one that we have direct control over. It is one that is out there that the MCBD is pursuing some other funds to be able to magnify the facade and code compliance grant programs, with their intent basically being to double that. That's not guaranteed at this point in time, but it is something that is being actively pursued at this point. That would really be directed towards buildings that are not participating in the downtown revitalization grant. Those owners are getting basically 80% of a project covered as part of their costs. Unfortunately, these buildings cannot be part of the downtown revitalization grant because there would be work happening on them before and during a grant period, which is not allowed. So essentially, you cannot do any work on the building, and they could not do their own work on the building either. Everything for the DTR program will be bid out. So that just didn't fit with that project and then some other ones that we have going on downtown. And then finally, to get to that $300,000, there's that $100,000 gap. In talking with Diana, we have $86,000 in cash on hand in the downtown TIF district. That could easily be pledged with this, with also then either pledging, a future debt of $14,000 to meet this. Again, this is really talking about pledging things, but how the mechanics of things work, depending on what you select here, is something we would go through at a later point in time. I didn't put lost in there for that $14,000, but you certainly could put that in there, or you could substitute that for the whole $100,000 if that's something more to your liking than tax increment financing. I do think that we have some possibilities looking forward that we will be making a final payment on a loan in the downtown TIF area or a bond payment from that area in fiscal year 2027, and I think that we should try and structure things in a way where we do have things that are providing some consistency so that we're not constantly messing with the taxable value of the district and affecting other taxing entities as well. So as I said, what I'm looking for is some direction so that we can bring forward a resolution on the August 23rd meeting that would be pledging support. As I mentioned with TIF, there's a whole process we have to go through with setting a public hearing, holding a public hearing, having a development agreement, all of that, where I'm not recommending we take that kind of step right now because we're talking about one of the buildings, but if there's to be TIF used at some point in that combination of $750,000, we would need to undertake that process when we're ready for that bigger development agreement.
Thank you. Questions or comments for Jessica?
Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
Jessica, what does the downtown TIF generate right now annually?
Oh, I can't tell you that off the top of my head. The annual urban renewal report does, I believe, provide that figure, but that's not one that I have. I can certainly get that, and we can email that out to you.
Is it enough to fund the whole 300,000?
I believe it would be, probably what we'd try to do is avoid pulling 300,000 at once, is to try and structure up, in a development agreement, structure payments based on milestones, so that we would be able to do that at various points.
I guess I like that. I know you don't want to do the public hearing and things, but I like that because now the building, yes, in the long term, is going to pay for its own financing. It's going to self-finance itself over someone's lifetime. Gabe's, not mine. So, if there's that much in TIF, I guess that's the way I'd like to go. We don't touch the other funds at all. And we build these, I don't know what you call it.
Phases.
Yeah, build it in phases, like these milestones, what you're saying. I think the Cutlers could work with. Would that interfere with the other grants or other funding, though? I mean, does that cause a problem for the bank or anybody else?
I think we probably have to look into detail before we could say for sure yes or no. It's certainly something we'd be open to exploring.
I think if we got grant money, right,
Oh, go ahead.
that, if we get grant money that really isn't costing the city anything, obviously we'd like to take advantage of that. But I think you're looking, if I understand you correctly, you're not just looking at this $100,000 for TIF. We know we've got another $450,000 coming, and so how do we fund that, which I think is
I'm
clearly
looking at the big
problem.
picture, Joe, because what'd you guys say, this is almost a $5 million project?
Yeah,
And I'm looking, this thing will pay for itself over, so many years. This is, but what, I guess with using TIF and having to have the public hearing and everything, what is your timetable? Is that even feasible right now?
So what I would say is you wouldn't move forward with the formal setting a public hearing, doing a development agreement now. We would do like we've done with low-income housing tax credit projects where it's coming forward, pledging that the council would undertake the actions for a development agreement that would provide $300,000 in tax increment financing, and not get into the details of it, as that would be reserved for a later date.
I guess I would suggest that be explored by both parties to see if that penalizes you or helps you. It'd mean for both of us. I mean,
Yeah.
well, what's it?
I think we can explore that. That would be the way, then we could figure it out, because it's hard to say right off the top of our heads exactly what
Yeah,
that
because
looks like.
the reason I say that is these other funds, it's money that we are earmarking for other things, or, it's always there. It's always going to be there. But TIF's going to self-generate itself. It's a fund that's going to, you guys are in that TIF. It's what we want to do. We want to redevelop downtown. This I see as a real use of TIF. So, thank you, Your Honor.
You're welcome. Yeah, thank you for raising the point.
Your Honor, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Jessica, if we go with full TIF like Gary is thinking, does that strap down their apartments, their 14 units or whatever, to be in moderate or low income?
I have no idea how the assessor would look at that with the 5-year agreement that would be in place for the community development block grants. They certainly wouldn't be is it section 42 units? Yeah, so they wouldn't be section 42. That's typically what happens with the low income housing tax credits, is that they're taxed completely differently. But the assessor will look at, there is a value assigned to the commercial space, and there is a value assigned to the, basically the upper story multifamily residential spaces. And so, but I have no idea if the community development block grant will do anything with that.
Okay, thank you. I agree with Gary. That's all.
Okay. Other comments or questions? I just keep thinking of another corner in town where we've watched the Tall Coin come back to life, the Our Wholesale building come back to life, the Kibbe building, which I know that Al and I were on the council when we voted on helping out with that project. I can't remember, well, Bethany, I'm sorry, you certainly were part of that.
Just chopped liver over here.
Well, thank you for agreeing to serve for me and have Irwin Makokada again, like I was supposed to.
Forgot who you were since you haven't been at some meetings.
Hey, I missed the last one, so, and that does happen, doesn't it? Anyway, with the Daimler's now and the other building and the other part of that corner, the old party popcorn building, that may come to life. I see that part of the facade grant thing that we got going on. That corner has just kind of become a real showplace, and this corner has the potential to do the same thing, that kind of investment. I know the town of Dubuque went through a major renovation downtown with downtown living, and it just brought everything to downtown. It was so cool.
Your Honor?
Yes, sir.
So Jessica, what do you need from us tonight then?
Well, if you're saying that you would, at this point in time, pledge $300,000 in tax increment financing, I need probably a motion to bring a resolution to that effect to the next city council meeting.
But in the meantime, if we do that tonight, Diana, you, the Carters, the Cutlers got to put a pencil to it and figure out if that's really doable, right?
Oh, yeah, I have, so where I have a concern is if you're drawing 300,000 at once, but in this type of agreement, you wouldn't need to. So we've been taking, I was trying to think with like the MCBD and the facade grant, we've been pulling 70,000 plus whatever our debt payment is. So that's where I don't think it will be a problem. I think the district generates that much increment. I just can't give you what that big dollar amount is.
And do you know of another project that this is going to put a stop to that's coming to us right now? Is there something in development?
Well, I think, the thing to think about is this, we're talking about 300,000 for one building, but there's a $450,000 gap for the other building. And so we realistically could be talking about $750,000 as a total development agreement in how it might lay out when we get to that point of needing to discuss
No,
things.
what I'm asking is, are there other entities that are you working with anybody else down on Main Street? Besides what you and I talked about earlier?
At this point, I would say no, there's some other projects, but we're not talking about any tax increment financing assistance. At this point, they're smaller ones.
Well, Your Honor, if it's in agreement with the parties in front of us, I would make a motion that that's a direction we explore first.
Second. Further discussion on that? We should probably call for public comment as well. And seeing nobody rise, let's take a vote.
Lottie Huff,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Weirin,
Yes.
Gowdy,
Yes.
Hoop,
Yes.
Isom.
Yes. The staff has its direction. Carters, thank you.
Thank you very much for your time tonight.
Go get it.
Thank you for what you're doing in this town. You didn't mention the fact you're the incoming president of the Chamber of Commerce, and you're the school board person who served, elected for that for a number of years. So we just really do appreciate, those who know, appreciate what you guys are doing here. Thank you. Okay, on to the next item, and that is the discussion of the American Rescue Plan update fiscal year 2020 general obligation borrowing discussion.
Yes, so this is going to appear repetitive to some because we kind of just generally went through this at the last meeting. So there was a discussion of bringing forward sort of what our bonding list and the American Rescue Plan project list play together. And it truly is the State Street project that is the common denominator on that. And how we have things penciled in currently is $2 million of American Rescue Plan funds, though certainly more could go towards the project based on the sanitary sewer, storm sewer, water, and then pavement above them that need to be removed and replaced for those upgrades, and then 4.5 million in GO bonds. And so what I did is I started to review this a little bit further, was look at how we could adjust either of those numbers from the 6.5 to flex it in either way. And so there's a few different options. Not including Phase 1B would reduce the cost by $100,000. I still think it's something that we'd want to do at a point in time, but it is not sort of the grand replacement that you would have between 3rd Street and 3rd Avenue. The other thing is that we do have a healthy cash balance in the sanitary sewer fund. And so we could pledge $500,000 of those funds in order to try and offset that sanitary sewer cost that we are estimating right now. That's subject to change. We're still at that design level estimate. The other thing that we could do is, that I feel comfortable with, is looking at grant funds coming in to probably cover $100,000 for street trees and aesthetic elements. There's a T-Mobile grant out there for $50,000 for Main Street Iowa community, or Main Street communities nationwide, for things that are meant to enhance. And so when you start to see some things that are out there like that, also knowing the local support that we enjoy for a number of our projects and what this does, I do think that there's probably $100,000 that we could seek from outside sources for some of the elements that are part of that. And then the final option that I threw up there was looking at waterworks for a contribution to the infrastructure costs. There are 2 water mains, one on the north side, one on the south side, that would both be replaced, as well as then all of your valves and hydrants along the way as well. And so that is something that they can contribute to. As they like to remind me, and I'll remind you, we're all coming from typically the same bucket of who's paying for things. And so, but Shelley did know that this was a project that would probably have some cost to it. We just hadn't gotten into the what does it really cost conversation. So there's what I would say is easily about $1 million there that we can probably say doesn't need to come from American Rescue Plan funds, doesn't need to come from GO bonds, and can come from sort of this combination of these other sources of sanitary sewer, waterworks, and looking at some grant funds. So the other thing I will just throw out there right now is if you look at the opinion of probable cost, you will notice it has a very healthy 20% construction contingency. So Bolton and Mink did this because working in a downtown area, when you're not actually knowing what you have underground for sure and what strange things we will find, it's best to start from that design level at a very high contingency, knowing that as you start to actually do that design and develop those plans and specifications, that contingency can always change based on what you know as you kind of start your investigation into the project. So I do think that we have some areas where there's still some wiggle room, but the idea would be that we would still be able to pursue this project here in this fiscal year, still working off of that estimate of 6.5, so that we basically could so essentially, if we can approve at the last meeting in October an agreement with Bolton and Mink for the engineering, they believed it would take a 3 to 4 month period for the design to be done, and we'd probably be putting it out to bid early next year, with some construction to happen in 2022 and the remainder to happen in 2023. And so it's hard to think about that being so far off when we're standing here in 2021, but that's where, again, time is of the essence to keep things moving so that we don't put us into a complete 2023 project as well. So this is the common denominator between the two, and I do have, as I showed you, I do have the spreadsheets up. I'm not sure if you want to make adjustments on this one between the American Rescue Plan and the bonding list, where we can then start to see where things lay out and kind of go from there, if you would like me to just kind of go through the changes that are on the American Rescue Plan form first.
Any preferences by anyone?
Okay, well, I'll just run through. So there was a question from Councilmember Thompson at the last meeting of did Waterworks get their wish list of things that they would like to add on? They did include some equipment requests, which are not eligible for the American Rescue Plan funds, but they did include 3 items as well, which total $650,000 that they asked that I put before you for consideration. And so, as you can see, we have $4.75 million in projects identified with the American Rescue Plan funds. We only have 3.9 awarded, and I should say that 4.75 does not include any general fund replacement at this time. So I think as you start to think through this, probably one of the first questions is, if you want to replace revenue in the general fund, what does that amount look like? And then that then starts to probably put some other things into place as well. So I'm looking for some decisions tonight.
So where you said on row 2, general fund revenue replacement, all available, what is that number for this fiscal year?
So it's $240,930 for this fiscal year, and that actually does total up to more than we actually have available. So that's where I dislike the way that they did this formula, because it basically sets it that we're not actually going to experience, more than likely, I'll caveat that, more than likely, we're not going to experience $1.2 million of revenue loss in the general fund in fiscal year '24, but it's just the way their formula works. So, but what that formula says is you can pretty much put any amount of money between $240,000 for this fiscal year up to $1.2 million in that final fiscal year, and the justification for that is already there because we've used their formula. So there's a range of what you have to do. You don't certainly have to go that high. That's really just showing you what your cap is.
Gotcha.
Any other questions? If not, I'd solicit a request for action from the council.
I guess I'd like a little more information about the general fund.
So we have a deficit going into, well, in the fiscal year that we're in, there was an approved deficit, and then we had a budgeting error in police wages, and I think we're at 170 to 180,000 that we're moving forward with. Most of that is going to be a structural deficit, which means that it's just going to compound. It's not going to sort of go away on its own as like hotel, motel usage increases and other things. So we do have a structural deficit. My word of caution is this is filling a gap with some temporary revenue, but we still have a structural issue that we need to take care of. This buys you time to get into some years where I think we'll see some additional taxable value hit the tax rolls, but it's not going to solve everything.
So, Your Honor?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, Beth,
That's
did
okay.
you have a follow-up?
Go for it.
Your Honor? So we know for sure it's 3.9 million, right?
Correct. Yep.
We have to use it in, we have to commit it in 2 years, right?
They want you to have pretty much everything committed by, and this is, I will say this is absent of the general fund revenue replacement, but the 2026 is the drop dead deadline of you can no longer have those funds. December 31st of 2024 is really where everything has to be committed.
Where did the 850,000 come from for Mike's fishing pond?
So the Edgewood Stormwater Project, that came from Bolton and Mink.
No, I mean, where were we going to fund that out of?
So it would need to come out of so it's new. It's sort of the unknown cost that didn't have a funding source. This one opened up. So it's to go back with the Edgewood project. Initially, when we were applying for grants, we were using a stormwater study that was using 1998 rainfall amounts. Those have increased, so we basically didn't have enough stormwater capacity.
So where I'm going is the American Rescue Plan, we can do, that money can use for all that stormwater development as part of Edgewood.
Correct, and the EDA did confirm that the way to do that so that it's not commingling is that you would have two separate projects so that the Edgewood stormwater and the retention pond, also known as Mike's Fishing Palace apparently, would basically be a project that would be bid at the same time but separately as it would have different funding. So EDA has blessed the idea of moving forward in this direction.
And then, in your conversations with Shelley at the Waterworks, doesn't she understand that there's a long-term benefit to getting rid of 2 mains on State Street and going to 1 main? And that they're going to continue, these 100-year-old mains are going to fail. I don't understand why their funding sources aren't coming forward for some of this stuff.
So I would say we still have some negotiation to do on design. They're using a different engineering firm than we're using, but we haven't really we just did sort of the design based on replacing what they have because they expressed that that's what their desire is. So I don't know if we have some arm twisting that we can do to get them to change up their design, but through this whole process, we've learned that they do have these transmission mains kind of running throughout the city, and so this isn't the only street that has two of them there.
I guess then, if that's the case with them, I mean, you don't have to have direction tonight. There's still a lot more research to be done.
So where I would like direction, and I should perhaps be a little bit more clear, is this list. What are we borrowing? What is the 9.7 million, assuming you want to go up to 9.75 million? What do you want to borrow? Do you want to reduce the 4.5 million that's here by the million that I recommended, or do you want that to come off the American Rescue Plan side? How do you want to balance things? This is the list. It's as we start, the longer we sort of delay in getting our process going, I can't bring back a contract to you to get Bolton and Mink started on the design until I know we're moving forward. We're in a standstill on doing anything with a master plan for Riverview Park at this moment, but it's something that I'd love to have done so that we have some projects to put into the capital improvement plan in January. And so there really does need to be some direction forward, because otherwise we're standing still. We're here in January, and I can't present you some of the things that we would want to probably at least consider as capital projects for next fiscal year.
Okay, I guess I'll take the lead and start the ball rolling and be hated. I would say the 200,000 we're committed to, because we already promised for that, the parking lot. But we already saved 40,000 tonight, so that's down to 160.
And talking with Jeff, I don't think we can reduce it. It's not working that way. Exactly.
We took it out to not pay contract, but we are still gonna do all the seating, and we're also using some of that money to pay for the lines.
Right. Then I would say take the 30,000 out, and we'll find a source to fund that. I would say take the 650,000 out, we'll find a source to fund that. And then here's the one that's gonna get me hated. If we do the first phase of the viaduct now, and then we're gonna go 4 years before we do the rest of the work, and the way the federal government likes to give money for new construction, I say we spend the 800,000, tear Center Street Viaduct down, live without the viaduct for 3 years, and get a brand-new 4-lane viaduct in 4 years from the federal government. And crickets.
You get that in writing?
Something just landed in the principal
Yeah.
somewhere. But
So Gary, you're taking out more than what's needed to take out, which is fine. But I guess my question would be, if you can sit there and do some additional funding from the State Street project, which was laid out, you can reduce the amount of the 4.5 million that's on the downtown implementation.
Right.
To be able to sneak it in underneath, so.
That's where it's gotta come out at.
Then it becomes a conversation for later on what we prioritize from the American Rescue Plan funds. And I have a few opinions about that, so I think from this, I think it's the 4.5 million that we do something with some of the additional funding, sanitary sewer fund offset, any funding from the Marshalltown Water Works. If there's 100,000 in grant funds, that sneaks you underneath that amount pretty easily, assuming that those are rather viable options, which it sounds like.
So you're suggesting just take $1 million off the 45, or 4.5?
Yeah.
Take it down to 3.5?
Yeah.
That solves everything?
It solves this
Well-
discussion, then we have to get to the American Rescue Plan discussion, which is a different one.
So this one gets her on her way then?
For this portion, yeah.
any other reactions to that?
I think I agree with Gabe.
I'm losing my hearing, but I thought I heard it over this direction too.
I'd rather not nitpick from a whole bunch of different items and just do one if we have some additional funding elsewhere. And then we just need to figure out what we want to do with the American Rescue Plan funds.
So what you're saying is, we get this, take $1 million off that, we're gonna go back and fine tune this later anyway, when the time comes.
Well, no, this would be, we're getting this to our attorneys to go ahead and start setting up the public hearing authority and getting them into their essential corporate purpose or general corporate purpose to bring back the setting of a public hearing to borrow it. So I'd like this to be something that a majority of you are comfortable with, if indeed it's taking off $1 million or it's zeroing out two projects to get to where you need to be.
Can we take off 2.5 million and put $1 of the million into the street improvements, make it 4 million?
Then you're still $1 million short on your State Street project.
No, American Rescue Plan.
You'd be using then 3 million of your 3.9 on that.
Do we want to jump to the American Rescue Plan funds and decide which ones you're going to cut now, later?
We have too much need and too little money.
But when the money is free, you can't complain. American Rescue Plan funds.
So I guess let me ask the question, is everybody in favor of every single item that's on the American Rescue Plan fund? I mean, there's a $776,000 difference, not including general fund replacements. I mean, I highlighted a few, right? I know we're gonna have to address it eventually, but impacts funded through '24, so does FY '23 really needed? There's no structure to the beautification program for the neighborhood, which is $200,000 of the total. While I'm not necessarily wanting to take that off, I don't know that's on the top of the priority list of all of them there. And then I guess the Marshalltown Waterworks funds are, you know, a nice ask, but it's $650,000 of the total summation of the funds requested.
So on impact is funded for this current fiscal year. It is one that, right now, there are multiple grants that YSS and the police department are applying for, but we don't know where that is in terms of July 1 of 2022. So there, as of now, there is no funding for after July 1 of 2022.
So requested, not awarded.
Your Honor. So Jessica, what you're saying is a lot of those are just placeholders right now.
They're placeholders. I think that we have a great program and that there's been a lot of positive reception to it, but we just don't have knowledge
And
now.
I don't mean just impact, I mean everything in the future. Some of those are just placeholders.
Yeah, so I would say what's not a placeholder, the Edgewood's not a placeholder, State Street, whatever it is not a placeholder. Lead hazard remediation, this is less than what is truly needed to probably fund the projects that will have gaps on them. So this is real. This is something that we could get started on right away with any sort of funding commitment. The neighborhood beautification program, we have nothing set up in terms of design. It's something that we felt like would be a good program to target into our highest poverty census tracts to kind of help the neighborhoods out. Affordable project support, again, not pledged tonight, so we do know that there is a low-income housing tax credit project out there that does have a gap. We just don't know when that will be formally coming forward or if they'll get an award to necessitate that coming forward for a conversation. LMI housing, we've had a few meetings, but we don't have anything that's concrete, but it is something that was out there as an idea. And then these from Waterworks, I would assume are fairly concrete.
But those could be done differently too.
Correct, you could say no and say those should be paid for with your rates.
Your Honor?
Yes, sir.
I would say those are an easy no tonight.
Is that how everybody is feeling on those?
That's how Gabe would feel.
What?
I'm seeing about 4 nods, yes.
So then you get to the point where just on a basis, on your flat face with, as it is, with no general fund revenue replacement, and leaving State Street at 2 million, you've got 126 as your difference there.
That's with the, That's with the 2 million for State Street this year, right?
So I put it in fiscal year '23,
Oh, okay,
just
okay,
because that's
fine.
probably when we'd need it.
Okay.
Gary, I like your idea on the streets upping it, but I just don't think that this fiscal is reasonable to try to be able to tackle that. I mean, I think that's a much more long-term discussion on how we manage that going forward from a
Yeah.
bonding and prioritization.
Yeah, I concede to that.
And so one of the things that we talked about earlier is that we've got $6 million built in here for Phase 2A and 2B. If we're cutting that down to just an 80% contribution, that's how you start putting some money into some of those other projects. So being aggressive with grant funds is going to be our key to shuffling money from one project to another.
So are we now at a situation we can move forward then?
No, this number needs to be reduced to 9.75 million.
And you truly believe we need 1.5 million for the D&D?
Like I said, I put that out in my memo that I feel like that's one that could be cut. It doesn't mean that I won't be back in front of you at some point probably asking for money. We don't know what our FEMA request is going to end up with, but I do think that probably the timing of when we need the money, we could easily reduce that number for this fiscal year.
And if we don't replace the bridge for the trailhead this year, you said that could be, if we just do the restrooms, we can lose 350,000 there?
So that is actually for the bridge and just the connection across the Legion Golf Course from the north side of the Naughton property. So that does not include, that's not the trailhead. The trailhead where, oh gosh, where did I see that? Oh, it's the next one. So that one basically it's sitting right there. So it's in a future year.
And what was the bridge? If they ride across the creek right now on the existing traffic bridge, what do we save on the bridge?
About $200,000 estimated. It's seen that a new bridge is probably $500,000 to just buy a new one, put it in place, whereas you've got $300,000 worth of deck replacement, probably some piling and pier replacement.
No, I don't mean, not replace that bridge. I'm saying.
Right, that's all work that you have to do to make it available for bike traffic.
No,
It's not
I'm
just-
saying in the meantime, they use the traffic bridge that cars are moving on. And we look at other funding sources from the other organizations to put a bike bridge in and tear the old bridge out. I'm saying in the meantime, we have one little hiccup for now for a couple of years. They ride across the bridge on 6th Street, 3rd Street, or right across the sidewalk. Because that would take out 350, right?
That would take out 500,000
Of
out
that
of that
650?
figure. Yeah. Because there's 500,000 that's budgeted for bridge replacement, for the replacement to basically bring in that new bridge in that $650,000.
And what was budgeted to tear down the old bridge?
That was basically, it was part of it in total. We haven't gotten into design or anything. It's working off a very high level cost. But knowing that keeping the existing bridge and making the improvements to it is a $300,000 project, new bridge is $500,000.
Well, I guess I appeal to the two bikers on the up here. What does that do to you as a biker?
I'm no biker, I'm a runner. I guess, so maybe let me just ask one question. If we're taking $1 million out of the downtown implementation plan, based off of some additional funding, isn't this a moot point at this point in time? And then what we do for that project specifically becomes a project-specific discussion on scope of work? Because downtown implementation plan would then turn into 3.5, and that more than exceeds your max to borrow, or
Whoops.
Also, if these are really funded in fiscal year 2022, when are they starting? it seems like we're kind of in the middle of this stuff.
You would have some of these start, I mean, 200,000's already out there, 30,000 would be spent. You would probably be able to construct, whether it's purchasing a bridge, and maybe the bridge won't be delivered before June 30th, but, you know, there's other things that can be constructed. I think that we would have the South Center Street Viaduct out for bid and hopefully work being done. Same with street improvements. I know Justin and Jay are chomping at the bit there. And like I said, most of what we'd be looking at for the downtown implementation plan would be just the engineering, but it's knowing that we'd incur cost immediately after July 1st, so the funds really do need to be on hand.
Okay.
And then D&D is just kind of, it's that grab bag of, there's, the budget that I put together has some projection of expenses for future years, so that I would hopefully not have to come back very frequently, but we do have some very big buildings that we own right now that are looking to be expensive if we don't have FEMA participation.
Jessica, did you add the million back on the other spreadsheet that you just pulled out of there?
No, I changed 3.5 to 4.5, but I didn't change anything on the American Rescue Plan except for removing the waterworks items.
5 hours a year, you know,
But that-
15 grand a year.
That changes that 2 million to 3 million, doesn't it?
That's quite.
In the next year?
No, this would be using the $500,000 in fund balance and waterworks and grants to pull $1 million out.
You know,
The little list on that first memo we
order to
went
make
through,
room
where
for
it was 500,000 here, 100,000 there, and 100,000 there, and other sources.
Do you have a recommendation for taking down the dangerous and dilapidated buildings?
Yeah, I think that I proposed initially in combination with the master plan of putting those two together to put it to the 9.75 million. And so, let me go back to where we were. So I think it was taking 250,000, 300,000 out, and then removing the Riverview Park master plan and using local option sales tax for that, so it could move forward sooner rather than later as well. So to show you what that would look like. Oops. Oh, goodness.
1.25?
What did I do here? Well, I think I had been calculating all along. This is a huge error on my part. So I didn't set up my formula correctly. So there's actually more to take out. I'm very sorry about this.
So we're back to 3.5 million on the downtown implementation program, no matter what.
Yeah, I think you're correct, Councilmember Isom.
Well, you also have 1.25 million in D&D, not 125,000. We got one too many zeros.
No, it would be 1.25 million.
Instead of
Oh,
1.5.
gotcha. No, I'm reading that wrong. You're
Yeah.
right.
So this is completely my error. We can take this back and look at this again, and I'll talk with all of you in the meantime before our next meeting on August 23rd and see if there's some things to figure out and what that looks like.
Okay.
And how to make that work between both funding sources.
I think that makes sense. We also have tended to trust what you and the staff come up with as proposals too, so I'd encourage you not to be bashful for what the staff is thinking, because you guys are dealing with us on a week-to-week basis, so that we aren't.
Okay.
All right.
Bummer, sorry. It
No,
really sucks to not
I
catch up the
apologize.
right cells.
That's a rookie error that I should have taken care of before, and I can't believe I did that.
It's Monday.
Well, I went into law because I wasn't very good at math, and I didn't catch anything there. All right. Well, let's go on to the most exciting topic of the night, which is the council annual revisions, which takes a lot of work, I know, but
Yes, so I tried to summarize this. I didn't receive any feedback on any specific changes, but if there's reason for keeping this as a review for another meeting, I'm perfectly fine with that. But I do want to kind of run through some highlights that I did make in terms of just some suggestions in here. This kind of has to do with how this is set up, that at the very end, we have these two other sections or two other parts about public participation and, open meetings law, which is just a restatement. I think that those things can really be worked into the body of what we have in general and remove all of these different parts. And so that's kind of the base proposal that I have here. As we go through, we don't have anything here about the mayor's veto power. That's something that I think we should add because it is a restatement here of essentially what some of our Code of Iowa says about what duties are assigned to the mayor. The other thing I wanted to do is it says that department heads or other designated employees shall attend council meetings unless excused by the mayor or city administrator. I would like to reword this from shall to may. Generally, if I have somebody who approaches and says, hey, I don't have anything on the agenda tonight, are you okay with me not being here? I say yes, but I just don't like the word shall in that situation, that I think it gives some flexibility. But we still do have staff checks in with me before each meeting to make sure that it's okay that they're not present. The other thing that is an important thing is our regular meeting for rule that we have had to accept when a Monday is a holiday. The event or the meeting is then held at noon on the next day. So noon on the Tuesday. You guys, as a group, have tended to want to do that at 5:30 p.m. I'm recommending that if that is still your desire to, rather than do a noon meeting, but do a 5:30 meeting on the Tuesday following a holiday, that we would make that change in the rules so that we are following the rules and not kind of rotating back and forth and being consistent with something.
Do you think we need to box ourselves in there? Can we just say that we'll just reschedule to a later date?
So that would be something that we could have that, because we've basically been having that discussion then as part of a council meeting and having a motion to set the meeting at noon versus 5:30, or 5:30 versus noon at council meetings prior to, so that we can set things. So it's certainly something that we could say that the council must make a motion for when a special meeting will be held when a regular meeting falls on a holiday.
You can also insert the word usually. In that event, the meeting will usually be held at noon on the next day, just kind of giving us the leeway. But I do think, noon at 5:30 on the next day. That has been everybody's preference, I think.
Your Honor?
Over the noon, yeah.
I seek to preserve the flexibility.
Yeah.
And the all the way through.
And I could say unless otherwise chosen by the council or the mayor.
So I think that's the thing that we're trying to get out of, is sort of having all of these decision passed, that there's something that's clear, that if it's the council to decide it, I would prefer that this says that when a regular meeting day is held on a holiday, the city council shall determine the date for the meeting to be held. And that would just do like we've been doing, come forward on a motion for you to consider and to set it that way.
How about saying it shall be held the next day, without saying whether it's noon or 5:30? And then we can pick.
You'd still have to have a motion to do something, and so that's where it's kind of like it's then, you still have to have a motion versus something that's saying this is exactly where it is. So regardless, I think there's still a motion that would come out of it with that language.
Well, let's go with 5:30, give that a try, and see how that works for the next 4 years.
Yeah.
Well, but that hasn't been working for the last 2 years, so that's where I'm saying this has been a problem. If you don't feel like if you feel like or 5:30 has been what we've been doing. If you want to do something different, we need to still change that. So we can, either way is fine.
I guess I was just trying to preserve flexibility for the next council, but because 5:30 was better for some of us, I don't know. I know it's one more motion.
It should be a quick motion.
Yeah. We haven't really had any trouble figuring that out.
Chance to discuss it. Yeah, okay, fine.
Yeah. Well, let's go to 5:30 because that is a better time than noon for most people. Now, for special meetings, the noon one's been pretty slick.
Okay.
But for regular city council meetings, where the public is accustomed to coming here at 5:30, let's keep that as kind of the standard time.
Okay, we will make that change, and then that would be where it'd have to be a discussion item if somebody wanted to change it. And technically, then, as I went through the table of motions, the motion to suspend the rules requires a 3/4 vote, or 2/3 of a vote, I believe. I need to look at my table of motions there. So it will take a lot to change that. We hadn't actually been following the rules previously when we've been allowing you to set things, so I don't think there's been disagreement, so. Moving forward, we have a number of kind of sections here. I want to change the section that we specifically call media coverage into public access and/or ways to participate in the meeting. And this really gets into kind of, I specified it in the memo, but didn't specify it here. So we've been using GoToMeeting. GoToMeeting is one of those things that it came in handy, but we have probably zero participation out. Greg Broussard was on earlier, so everybody has dropped off at this point. I think the thing that I want to talk about in terms of GoToMeeting is when council chambers are open at our maximum capacity, and we are live streaming on our website now on YouTube, should we be using GoToMeeting for the public to participate in the meeting? And I think there's a difference between participating and listening, and so that was kind of one of the distinguishing features that I wanted to bring forward first for some discussion about the public.
Well, just like, our churches have moved worship services online, I think that's here to stay. So it's nice for people to, I know the streaming is one thing, but is there any reason why we should allow participation virtually? We're talking about the public, right?
Correct, and then the second facet to this conversation is council and staff for presenter participation.
Guess my only comment would be the amount of participation we had when it was GoToMeeting is pretty minuscule. So I think in person is more conducive to a more beneficial conversation in chambers in person than it is WebEx. I say that professionally too. So I think it's much more beneficial amongst all parties involved to be making sure that's in person. There's always been written comment to be able to be supplied to the city clerk for as long as I'm aware. So, it's not like if there's a concern or a question, it can't be addressed to a council member or to the city clerk prior to the meeting.
It's becoming awfully easy in social media to be a pain in the neck without much repercussion too. And so we're not experiencing the same problems that the Des Moines City Council has recently, but that may come someday, and I think we're less likely to have that kind of problem if we require people to be here.
So what that would mean if GoToMeeting would not be there for public participation is that we would probably, and it depends if you'd want to still use it for a listening. So there's both a link as well as then a phone number. We put both the link and the phone number on the top of the agenda. Is there still a desire to put both of those on so that people can use it as a resource to listen only, and that we start advertising it that way, that's another way to access it, but you're not going to be allowed to participate in it through those means?
I really think that if it's an issue that's important enough that you want to speak to it, you ought to be here. I think if you get out too far, then pretty soon the technology starts knocking you down with a lot of this stuff. Just if it's important to you, get up to the council meeting.
Bethany and I have been around the council long enough to remember, there have been about 3 people I can think of who would watch these, and when the topic gets hot and they want to get here, they get here.
Yeah.
And, anybody living in town can get here in 4 or 5 minutes, tops. 7? Oh, you live out in the hinterland, I didn't know that. Should we do annex you, Roger? Oh, okay. Well, I didn't factor in the speed limit. I wouldn't have said that, except the chief is gone.
So is that a recommendation to sort of remove go-to meeting now? The one little caveat that I'd probably throw in there is that if we do, we're still not done with COVID, that if the governor were to restrict capacities for public meetings, and that it's an order of the governor, that there would be language in there that says that it could be utilized at that point if we are limiting access in this facility.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
And the chief's back, so, oh, damn, he did hear that comment.
I didn't hear anything.
Good, thank you. Okay.
So then the next part of that question, which doesn't play into this but plays into another section, is usage for council members to join in, as well as we've had department heads who were maybe out of town, had an item, used it to join in, and then we've been able to have some speakers, some consultants out of the Des Moines metro area and other locations who have been able to use it to join in. Are you still okay with having it as a tool available upon request from council, department head, or a presenter?
Does it make us sound a little, no, if you want to say something, you got to be here at city council, but unless you're a city councilman, then you really don't have to be there. I think that sends a mixed signal, in my opinion.
The only caveat that I would probably add into that is council members are a voting member of the actions coming out of the agenda item. And so discussion versus elected representation are a little bit different, at least in my eyes. And for somebody who travels 30 to 40% of the time for work, it doesn't always work from that perspective. So that's the only caveat I guess I would throw in there.
The other boards I'm on have become, after COVID, have become accustomed to being able to remote in and vote that way too. So that has kind of become the de facto way to participate in meetings. Corporations are having to change a lot of ways they do the board meetings that way.
So I will say that it does say elsewhere in the council manual that council members can call in. Because of our camera situation where you really can't see online, you can't see all of you. That's where really it hasn't been something that's been widely used. But you could have an issue where maybe you don't have a cell phone signal, but there's Wi-Fi. And so that's where there's potential where someone could join on the go-to meeting. They could join through a call-in on that one versus actual, video connection as well. But it is something that would allow for a call-in number that would be a little bit different. Actually, no, I think we discovered it's, though you can't use the phone number on the Wi-Fi unless you have like Wi-Fi enabled on your cell phone. So.
Talking about this last meeting?
Yeah.
No, that was just my user error, my time zone
Okay.
misunderstanding.
Okay.
Can I ask a stupid question concerning that? It doesn't affect us in a small town, but how do we know that's really Gabe calling in and voting?
So
Is there a code they have to put in? Is there a council member?
they would have an audio pin, so to use the audio, everybody who tries to sign in has an audio pin, and so.
I mean,
that's-
just, what if just calling in?
Just calling in, then that's where it's basically the audio verification of, Gabe, are you caller one, that type of situation. So versus dialing in on our phone, which we could still do. I mean, there's probably just a difference of whether or not you want somebody to have a visual connection while participating remotely.
We're typically getting caller ID on those calls too, though.
We're actually dialing. I'm not letting anybody dial in because that doesn't have a direct number to it, so.
So if somebody steals Gabe's cell phone, then that could be a problem.
That could be a problem.
Yeah. Well, is there kind of consensus to let the participation continue in the future by council and mayor that have to be absent for good reason?
Well, you guys know how I feel. I think we all should be here, but I'm not going to carry a majority, so.
Yeah.
I don't disagree. I'm here when I can be. Unfortunately, COVID demand meant as soon as travel opened back up, that is open back up. So I don't disagree with you, Gary. I'd prefer her to be in person as much as I possibly can because I think it's more conducive to the meeting. But
And I'm only here tonight because the plaintiff in the case in Macokota on Friday afternoon got an excuse from his doctor saying he's too sick to proceed. Otherwise, I would have had to miss again, and that's part of my professional life. Actually, for the next mayor, we're still trying to recruit somebody. I think the council ought to consider doing what even Des Moines has and other cities our size have, which is a tiebreaker. To my experience.
That's a whole form of government change which requires a vote of the people, so I would not recommend doing that at this time.
I know.
I don't think we can make it a part of our rules. No, you don't. That is statutory.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I know. But there have been the times when it would be nice for the next mayor to have that ability, and times when the mayor in Des Moines has had to use it. I can't think of any time a mayor here has used veto power in the last 10 years.
Stan Brown.
Gene Beach did once.
There's vetoes on file.
Okay.
I remember one.
So I'll draft it as basically okay to allow the use. We'll review this again at the next meeting, just to keep going. This one, we no longer have a police department next door where you pick up your packets. Everything's online.
Right.
One of the items then.
Hang on. In that area, why are the agendas out on Friday? Why can't they come out on Thursday?
They have been coming out on Thursday.
Why can't they be required to come out on Thursday by 5?
Because sometimes other people don't always get things to you when you'd like them to get them to you. Sometimes we have budget going on, and so it's difficult to try and get everything done in a really short week when you've got budget meetings every Monday for a month. It's just not always possible, but that's the goal that we strive for. And I would say we're probably 75% of the time doing the Thursday agendas.
With the amount of information that's going out, I'd hate to push them to the point to where we end up with a bunch of errors just because we had to kick them out by Thursday. You know, get it out, is it good? Well, it's got to go.
Or you have items that just can't come forward for another few weeks, which could be of importance to you.
Before we changed from having weekly meetings to every or 2 times a month, it wasn't as big a deal, but now if we miss out on 2-week timeframes on some projects, that could be a problem.
The other thing that we have here, this one, it was a clerical error initially that we need to update that to waive readings for an ordinances of 3/4 vote, not 2/3. So that has to change. And then public comment, I've heard from a few council members that would like to move this to the beginning of the agenda. I should note that as I went back and read this in detail, it's not a rule that the public is allowed to comment at the end of each item on the agenda. It is up to the chairperson for the meeting as to whether or not that's allowed. And so public comment is basically, as we define it, as anything that is not on the agenda and they wait till the end. Is that something that you want to move to the beginning of the meeting? Is that something you want to keep where it is? Is there any other suggestion?
I've seen a lot of people suffer through long council meetings just to say what they want to say.
And some finally just give up.
Some give up. It is admirable, though, to stay through the whole meeting. But I didn't bring this up as wanting to move it to the beginning, so who did? Speak to it, Mr. Hoop.
Well, there was a couple of cases here where Bill Wilson wanted to speak, and he, like tonight, he would have had to sit here till 8 o'clock to get up to do a 1 minute. You know, if he's got something to say, it'd be nice to be able to say it and leave. He knows it's not on the agenda, so that was the only reason I'd make him wait for 3 hours, you know.
But what if someone's late getting here, that you have a caveat, we'll hear everybody at the beginning that's here, and then we'll hear more again at the end?
My preference would be not to have 2 areas of public comment on the meeting. You've really then sort of taken the control out of the hands of the council for the meeting, especially with per our rules, everybody has 3 minutes to speak.
Well, that's what I'm saying is, you know, what do you weigh? You know, we're talking 5:30, people get off work at 5, and, I mean, I get it. I mean, I've sat out there myself, till the end of a meeting, you know.
My druthers would be leave it at the end of the meeting. And I don't want to torture people to death, sitting here for 3 hours waiting for us to get done to say something. But a lot of times we discuss things that are controversial, and at the end of the meeting, somebody wants to get up and say something about it, you know? Well, they can't say it at the beginning after, you know, before we've done anything. You know, if they want to chew on us or whatever. So,
Another aspect is people can come at 6:30 pretty safely if they want to talk at the end of the meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll leave it at the end for now. We talked about go-to meeting. There are a number of items here under motions that I want to go to, what I put together for you on the agenda, and just point out some things, knowing that there's probably some more discussion. So this references the page numbers as they currently are for all of the motions that are defined in our council manual, as well as then with whether they're debatable, amendable, and what is required to approve. And so the ones that I highlighted in yellow, without sort of the to reconsider, the yellow ones are in conflict with Robert's Rules of Order. And so there's nothing wrong with that. These are our rules. We've got other things that are in conflict, but that would be the thing to discuss, is if there are any of these that are in conflict that you would want to change. And then what this will result in, and kind of to lay out my sort of, my plan for this whole area, is we've got these common motions, and then we get into debate, and we have a whole bunch of these other motions that are listed, as well as then talking about when it's majority and supermajority. I want to combine all of these into one section so that it's easier to follow and references back to that table of motions. So that would be the kind of the plan, which I'll restructure, but then what I did want sort of your feedback on really was more of that table of motions, if I can find it again. There we go. So we don't have to discuss all of these tonight. I can reach out to you individually and just see what your preferences are. There's probably some more things to think about that and what they would mean when they'd be used. So going back to the document, the motion to reconsider, I emailed the language on this that, as Roger reviewed this, that rather than saying voted in favor or voted against, that, or who voted against or voted in favor, that we just flat out list it all as it's who voted in the majority. And so that gets around sort of the issues we had last time, where you had a measure that failed because it didn't meet the 4 votes, but it still had a majority of council members present. So it would have been very clear if that was the language. So that is the suggestion, and so I think that will make this much clearer. I've had quite a few questions as to why 10 days for bringing up a motion to reconsider, and it's because under Iowa law, if the mayor does not sign something, does not veto something, it automatically becomes law of the land, basically, in 14 days. So you really can't wait 14 days or for your next regular meeting in order for that to happen. So generally, I'd say we have a lot of conversation anytime there's one of these situations, and that we have open conversation about process and how to proceed.
So walk us through what that would have looked like last meeting
So
till now.
can I
By
pick on you?
By whose version? Her interpretation of Robert's rules
The
or my
new.
interpretation of Robert's rules?
The new version, what you're proposing.
So the way that it would look is that a motion to reconsider could have been made by one of the 3 in the majority at the last meeting, which is what happened. So Roger's reading of what we currently have for language is that a motion to reconsider is not debatable. Is that correct? But that is in conflict with Robert's rules. And so that's where there's probably some more conversation about, is that something you want to change to be in line with Robert's rules about that one? to be discussed at, a kind of a later date here since we're getting on in time. But basically, there could have been a motion to reconsider. It would have required 2/3 of the council as a whole, which would have been all 5 members present, to be able to reconsider it at that meeting. And so that's going to be the thing. A motion to reconsider at that meeting is going to require the 2/3 of council. Same thing here, if the mayor says, well, Councilmember Thompson, you would like a special meeting to reconsider this, I will call one for this date, 7 days later on the next Monday. That motion to reconsider could be made by Councilmember Thompson. It still have to have those 5 votes for any discussion at a future meeting to potentially change the direction the council had took previously.
And then the issue that Jessica and I spoke about today is we don't have anything in here for if there's a mistake made or an error or you're wronged, because my interpretation is when the mayor decided that I could not debate, I made the motion to reconsider, we talked about it, the motion to reconsider, according to Robert's rules, I should have had the opportunity to debate why I wanted to reconsider it before he asked for the vote. And now I didn't get a chance to restate my case, but there's no way to come back at 75% until after January. So, and, there's a lot of things in this whole manual that we need to really go through with a fine-tooth comb and look at.
Yeah, and so that's what I'd asked of you all to do kind of after the last meeting, was to bring anything forward that was important. I will say that for my own benefit, just reading it through again and really thinking about how things work was of great help to me, and sort of understanding that even the organization of this is really wonky in some places. So that's something to think about, which will be a question for next meeting is, do you want a motion to reconsider to be debatable, which is what Robert's Rules does provide for. The other thing that's mentioned, that there's a board and commission manual. There is not a board and commission manual, so we need to create one, but I do want to reference kind of the creation of boards and commissions out of here and leave it just to council-created committees and start focusing on that language, that we will create a board and commission manual and work with all of our different boards and commissions and their dedicated staff person to ensure that we have individuals who are understanding of what their roles and responsibilities are and are signing off that they understand those, and beef up kind of our training program. Lots of pages of that, and then fiscal matters. Again, we kind of talk about those annually, and if we keep this section, there's probably a way to change it that just says by the second meeting in November of each year, the finance director will present the budget calendar for the city council to approve or something like that. That a lot of this stuff is stuff that happens based on just our budgeting requirements and isn't really anything that happens because it's solely stated here in the manual. And then, as I mentioned, just changing the public participation as well as the public records to move those earlier in the document. And the final thing, which I didn't put in here, but I did address in my memo, was this was adopted as part of our Code of Ordinances as Chapter 35. Councilmember Thompson references that frequently. I would strongly recommend that we go ahead and bring forward an ordinance to remove it, as this is really not something. This is something that should be flexible with the needs and changes. We just haven't done anything with it for quite some time. And so that's where I'd recommend we keep it out of the ordinances, where technically it requires 3 meetings unless there's 3/4 of you who are willing to waive them, and just put it back to resolution where it's a simple majority of you that are willing to do that. So that's what I have. What I will plan to do then is to work with Alicia to draft an ordinance for the next meeting to repeal Chapter 35. This is still approved by resolution. It's still something that exists as a document, and so the rules will still be in place until we amend them. I'll incorporate my changes and your feedback that I have tonight. If you have other feedback, please get that to me, and then we'll work on combining that into a draft document that we can go through at the August 23rd meeting. Okay, thank you.
Very good, thank you. Okay, we are now then at that public comment time where members of the public may make comments on any item not on the agenda. And to do that, you just approach the mic, state your name and address for the record, limit your comments to 3 minutes, and direct the comments to the mayor or council as a whole. Otherwise, and in addition, the mayor and council should not engage in discussion on those items raised by members of the public because that may violate the open meetings laws. Mic is open.
Hi, Sarah Rosenblum, Library Director. I know it's a long meeting, but if you just give me a couple minutes, I have some really important things to talk about. Sad thing is, this weekend, the library lost Thelma Kelly, who was a 30-year volunteer at the library. She was a wonderful woman who came 2 days a week and was always at our book sales. I think that might have been the last of our Iowa Trust scandal volunteers, the wonderful people that stepped up and helped the library effort took such a huge hit during that period, and we will miss Thelma desperately. She was in the library a couple weeks ago. We had no idea that she was under hospice care, and she just gently left us. Kind of going along with that today, too, we were notified that Velois Britnell passed away. Velois and Lee were both huge supporters of the library. We lost Lee a while ago, and Velois was just a beloved library member and supporter, and so we miss those people. And I do want to just say we were just notified, you may remember a couple years ago, we lost our only male employee at the time, Kevin Manning, passed away. We were just notified by the Organ Donor Network that due to Kevin's generous gift, due to his untimely death, that 45 grafts were created from Kevin's gift of bone and connective tissues to help so many people, not just in Iowa, but people in other countries, Ecuador, Peru, South Korea, Spain, and other states. So I know that many of you have been touched by organ donation and how important it is. So Kevin's gift. Kevin is a wonderful man who worked at the library for, I think, 17 years. And when new members would come, especially our youngest members, he would say, on behalf of the Marshalltown Public Library, let me welcome you to the Marshalltown Library. May you find only good things. And it was kind of his catch statement. And when we lost Kevin again, it was a big shock. So one of our wonderful volunteers and a staff member like Kevin, we hold very dear in our hearts, and we know how much they've touched the community. So we're just kind of sad that we've had several things happen to us. But hearing about Kevin's gift, and I'm listed as an organ donor on my driver's license, and it's so important. So it's just one more way that he gave back to not just his community, but both in other states and other countries. So I just thank you for indulging me. Thanks.
Thanks, Sarah. Anyone else from the public? Okay. The time is about 7:56 p.m. We're adjourned. Thank you for your participation.
Stick around 1 minute.